if you look at how much Daniel Jones is getting paid versus the stalemate that Saquon Barkley and the front office had this entire offseason, right? Like, if you were to actually just look at those two players in a vacuum, contracts aside, right? Saquon Barkley is infinitely more important to that offense than Daniel Jones is. You could quite literally go out there and pick up quite a few names out there who would put up similar numbers through the air, at least. We'll maybe give Danny Dimes his credit there for being able to scamper as long as he's not tripping over the 10-yard line into the end zone there. But he's got some legs. But at the end of the day, he is not an irreplaceable part. If Saquon had have held out this entire offseason, the Giants are in a world of trouble here. So that's where, to your point, as far as resetting the market a little bit there, I think there needs to be, and whether it is via this, running back summit that a lot of the top names in the league have kind of alluded to, and, clashing with management there, which we're now seeing play out in Indianapolis with Jonathan Taylor and Jim Irsay, and how that saga is going to play out. And even just some of the big name free agents where Dalvin Cook doesn't have a home. It looked like all of a sudden the Kareem Hunt was going to sign with the Saints today, and now he might be going to the Colts. Like, the market is just in such flux. And I think it really is because the running back position isn't getting nearly as much love as it should be, given the amount of work that they do there out on the field. So, like, Brendan, when a casual fan is watching a play evolve, they kind of figure like, oh, it was a passing play. Like, running back didn't do too much there, right? But like, in reality, like, walk us through all of the zone read schemes and all the blocking assignments and all the 5 million things that are actually taking place, even though it might not look like the running back was even involved.
Yeah, exactly. So as you alluded to, and first of all, I'd also like to point out that we keep referencing the Giants and Mr. Daniel over there, because I think that contract's absolute garbage too. So I love that we're just ripping it apart. But to answer your question specifically, on any given pass play, in Canadian football, generally the offensive line, the center is making the calls. In the NFL, the quarterback generally calls his own protection. So anytime the quarterback's moving up and out of the line, he's basically essentially pointing the protection for the offensive line. So essentially alluding to where the center is going to go. So as a running back, it's your job to be able to understand any type of point that the quarterback makes, or center in Canadian football makes. He's going to be pointing to the line or the linebacker that the line's going to pick up, or any secondary pressure. Depending on defensive schemes, you might have a couple of game plan pass protections so that you can pick up 4-man blitz to a side and free up the running back, that sort of thing. So on every single pass play, the running back has to be responsible for knowing where the line's going to, so which linebacker he's responsible to, any secondary or third reads. So whether he's scanning across the formation, whether he's picking up a secondary blitzer from his formation, what the offensive line's rules are on every single pass protection, whether it's 3-step, 5-step, whether the ball is going to come out fast, whether he's allowed to cross the protection in pass pro or not. And also generally they'll also, if nothing happens on that play, they'll be involved in the pass concept as well. So they'll have a specific target on the field where they're supposed to go, or on other plays they'll be free releasing and be directly involved in the pass concept as well. So even on a pass down, the running back has to know what the receivers are doing, he has to know what the quarterback's communicating to the offensive line, and he has to know what the offensive line's communicating to each other.
And then shifting to the offensive line perspective here, Kyle, like,
yeah,
you've played on a variety of teams, and some you've probably had great pass protection running backs, and some you've probably had, you might as well have a turnstile back there. Like, from an offensive lineman's perspective, like, how much easier is it for you to do your job when you know that behind you, you've got someone that is smart and picking up on all of these things and is actually a beast in pass protection himself as well, too?
1,000% easier. Especially when Brendan alluded to the center being the one ultimately responsible for making the line calls and checking everything when it comes to protection plans. So, one, it's important that the quarterback trusts the running back there, because if he knows that, Brendan's back here, he's going to be able to, lock down anybody who's coming off the edge or coming up, up the middle on a blitz. I'm good. I know where I'm going to step. I know where I'm going to set up. I know where my window to throw is going to be. And from an offensive line perspective, I mean, I'll just kind of go from the exterior with the tackles and then to the interior with the guards and center. From the guards and center, like it's basically you've got, if you're in a 40-man front or 4-man front with one running back, you typically have 2 down linemen on the interior and 2 linebackers, right? So ultimately, those are the guys who are going to be responsible for those 4 players. So the 2 linebackers and the 2 down linemen, those are the 3 interior linemen and the running backs' responsibilities, right? So, like Brendan said, depending on what the rules are, the center's going to call it out saying, okay, who's the Mac linebacker or the Mike linebacker? That's the most important thing. When you point him out, that shows you what strength the defense is in, okay? Once you know that, if you're in a weak protection, that means the running back typically is going to pick up the weak side. Or I don't know how, Brendan, you guys did it with Ottawa, but I know when we did it, it was running back had the weak side if we were in weak protection, offensive line blocked strong if we had strong protection. That means that the will linebacker, who is the weak linebacker, would be responsible for the running back. So again, if you know the running back's not going to step strong and go towards the same linebacker that the center is responsible for, everybody's good. Everything's copacetic. From a tackle perspective, one thing that I used to hate, and it would screw me up all the time, is that the running back set up where I was going to set up with my pass block. It happens so much, and people don't realize how much it happens. Whenever you see, an offensive lineman, especially a tackle, get bowled over on a bull rush, I will guarantee you, rewatch it 90% of the time, the running back is out of position and his feet get caught up with the tackle's set point. I'll guarantee you that. Okay.
Rule number 1, don't touch your tackles. I'm with you, Kyle.
Exactly.
Rule number 1, don't touch your tackles.
Your tackles have enough shit going on that you really have to just focus on what's going on in front of you. So yeah, 100%. Don't touch your tackles. But if the running back's reading that the linebacker's lined up wide, he might try to cheat and get a little bit wider so that way he can get out to that block. You don't want to do that. You're already in a good position set up right next to the quarterback. So a smart running back like Brendan, he'll know that and he'll just wait, right? He's going to use his eyes to block. He's not going to use his feet. He's not going to use his body. He's using his eyes. So the trust factor has to be there. And especially if you've got a good blocking running back there, it makes life easier for everybody on the offense. Receivers don't give a shit because they're just running their routes looking for the ball anyway. But everyone inside of the box, they care so much about how good that running back is at picking up everything that's going on. Because again, there's a million things that happen pre-snap. People who watch it on TV, you don't understand how much you're looking back and forth in the 5 seconds you've got when you get to the line of scrimmage to the time the ball is snapped. Yeah. It's crazy. Your brain has to work a million miles an hour. And if all of you work at the same pace, that's when you get harmonious offense. That's when you get points.
Yeah. And I think that's really speaking to what is kind of pissing off a lot of the running backs that are currently free agents and whatnot right now, is the fact that, okay, guess what? I'm an Eagles fan. I love seeing Cowboys players not have success there. But there is no rhyme or reason that Ezekiel Elliott should still be a free agent running back, because although his yards per carry and all of that keep going down, he does excel in pass protection. And when you need that 1 yard for a first down or a goal line plunge, he's still, even at this age, one of the more effective running backs out there. So even putting aside the fact that the salaries are kind of falling off a cliff, the fact that teams are eschewing some of these running backs who are actually good at the things like pass protection, converting first downs, goal line plunges, even change of pace backs there where you can plug them behind your starter, and they're still not getting the contracts, because it's not a matter of, Ezekiel Elliott's out there asking for $15 million a year. At this point, he's just trying to go out there and find a good fit for himself. And even that's still not fully materializing. So I really think there's more to the running back market being pissed off at ownership and the shifts that we're kind of seeing in this market than just, the days of $15 to $20 million contracts are gone. It really is. Some of these guys who can still play at that level aren't even getting looks, because it is just that churn and burn mentality that, you guys had alluded to a little bit earlier on there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're 100% right. And I mean, I can speak as a former player. It's impossible not to take any type of contract dispute personally.
Yeah.
It's impossible not to take it personally. So I mean, I don't blame a lot of these guys that are getting into it with management and the ownership groups, especially, you know, when you've put a lot of work and effort and I mean, in some of their parts carried your team for a couple of years, and then come contract time, you're who, right?
Mhm.
So I absolutely get the frustration, and in all honesty, I hope that they hold out and get paid, and if more of them started doing it, then I mean, you might get somewhere. The issue is just that, like I said, for whatever reason, and we've talked about a few reasons, that just the category value in general is just so lost that it's, where do they go from here? I don't know. I don't know the right answer. Is it going to take the next Barry Sanders to get the contracts back up, or what? Right? Because it's not like we don't have absolutely electrifying runners. Like you alluded to, if you look what Dalvin Cook's done the last 4 years, like the guy's an absolute machine. And obviously, I'm sure that there's a number of teams that are going to be putting in offers, but even when he does get paid, I don't think it'll be nearly what we expect or what he deserves, right? So it's, yeah, it's unfortunate that it's gone this way, but I don't blame any of the guys for having issues with ownership and management. They should be getting paid because they're involved in all facets of the offense, whether it's running, blocking, catching. You're completely involved in the number of games that get completely taken over by running backs. You could allude to. I mean, look at what Derrick Henry's done in a couple of playoff games. Like it's been absolutely crazy. There have been running backs that have just absolutely taken over games and won the game for their team. And like I said, come contract time, it's who. So
Yeah.
it's unfortunate.
Well, it definitely seems to be that the NFL in particular is really moving to, instead of it being, you know, a traditional power running back role, you need to be able to do it all. They want someone who can be out there for 3 downs, they can pass protect, they can catch out of the backfield, they can excel at a variety of different roles. You can line them out wide, whatever it is, right? But all you have to do is look back to last season. You can't tell me that even at his advanced age and as many injuries as he sustained, that if you put Derrick Henry on the Los Angeles Chargers up 27-0, you are not running out that game and walking on to the next round there, right? No disrespect to Eckler here. He's phenomenal at what he does. But this is what happens when you completely throw away the run game, right? When it's not there. Every single team that goes out there and competes and goes on deep runs, yeah, they've probably got a hell of a quarterback under center, but they also have a good running game as well, too. Eagles made the Super Bowl. Miles Sanders came back from the dead to go from 0 touchdowns to, I think, 12 on the ground last year. And that was a large part of why they made the Super Bowl. Yes, Jalen Hurts went up a notch. Yes, they had, you know, quite a few also additions on both sides of the football there, but it was their revamped running game, because the year prior, when they didn't do anything, it was because they couldn't get anything going on the ground. So it's 100% to your point there, where it's a little bit shocking that if you run through the teams that have success and go on deep postseason runs versus the ones that don't, we aren't connecting the need to have a good running game there and rewarding those that can, you know, put up yards per carry and shed tackles and still be those bell cow running backs like they should be on the open market.
Yeah, I think a big issue is the perception that the running back position specifically is is easily replaceable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a big issue with the market. And I mean, coaches that value 3 yards per carry might be right.
Mm-hmm.
So, but at the same time, there's also always going to be the game changers that are 100% going to be worth those the $20 million contracts. But it unfortunately just might be a thing in the past. Like I said, you kind of alluded to Kyle talked about Christian McCaffrey earlier, and you look at what he can do in the game, and I mean, it's just absolutely phenomenal athletes. And the other thing that's unfortunate too is nobody talks about how much easier it is to get the ball to running backs than it is to get the ball to other playmakers as well. Either right? Look at I mean, even just look at the Patriots and when they've run into quarterback issues, what do? Run the ball 40 times a game with 3 running backs and pull off wins that they have absolutely no business winning. And some of the quarterbacks that have played for them and haven't played well have even gone on to get decent contracts elsewhere because they've been supported by good running backs while they were in New England and then didn't do anything at their new home. Right. So it's it's weird and a little bit frustrating, but I mean, at the same time, teams keep drafting young running backs, and these young running backs keep pushing these veterans year after year. And I think that turnover is what's really also just kind of degrading the market. If you look at, I'm a Kansas City fan, look at Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right? And what happened with him? I mean, one year he's the best thing to happen to Kansas City, and the next year he's forgotten about. So I mean, and without his option picked up and stuff like that, it's where do you go? And I think, the perception is that the running back position, if you don't have a top 3 running back, the rest of the running backs are easily replaceable.
Yeah. Now, to that point there where, everyone is kind of moving on to, well, let's just replace them with someone new in the draft. And it doesn't even need to be a first rounder anymore because they almost want to have that churn and burn of, oh, we're only going to get, 4 years out of them and then we'll move on to the next one. So we will take them in the 2nd or 3rd round or whatever. So Kyle, like for someone like Bijan Robinson, who's now coming into the league, like how important is it, not just for him, but really the running back position and its sort of stature in the eyes of some of these front offices in the NFL, for him to have a really strong season in Atlanta to hopefully kind of course correct some of that perception a little bit?
I mean, I think that it's important in one regard, in the sense that it's all about what the image looks like, right? We're talking about the image of the running back. On the surface, if he plays well, yeah, it looks like a really smart pick by Atlanta. But, say they would have picked Tyree Wilson at defensive end, and he doesn't play because of his foot, or he puts up 2 sacks his rookie year. That looks like a terrible pick in the start, right? Again, the draft is very finicky in regards to where where these picks end up going. Bijan Robinson ended up in probably the best spot to excel, being in Atlanta. One, they've got the highest graded offensive line with Pro Football Focus in regards to run blocking. 2, they've got a head coach who wants to run the football. And 3, they've got a young quarterback whose best friend is, like Brendan just alluded to, handing the ball off to a running back because it's going to limit the amount of turnovers that he's going to have. So I think that with all those 3 things combined, especially with the talent that Robinson does have, he's got all the tools set up for him to be a successful first-year running back, like a Saquon Barkley was in his rookie year. So I think it's important in the sense that, yes, will it look good, and will other teams now be less, standoffish when it comes to taking a running back the first round? Maybe. It is a copycat league, so maybe you get, influence 1 or 2 more guys to make that decision. That's fine. But I think at the end of the day, it's not as important as it maybe used to be, because what's one of the things that Bijan Robinson does probably better than 90% of the running backs in the NFL right now coming into the league? It's catch the football. So even if he struggles running the ball, he still brings another option to the table, much like Jamar Gibbs does with Detroit, which is, I think, how they're going to use him to start the season. So I think that the running back position has evolved to the point of, they are being asked to do all these things, which is why I don't know how they're being devalued as much as they are. But it's important in the sense that the image of the running back will take a hit even more if he doesn't excel. And they'll say, well, this is why we don't take them in the first round. But I think at the other side of it is he's now giving Atlanta's offense another weapon that can take eyes off of what they've already got, which is Kyle Pitts and Drake London. So if you can do all those things, and I mean, Ritter's a pretty mobile quarterback, I think he can have a hell of a year rushing the football if you run a good RPO system there. But I'm going to go back to, something that you guys just talked about. And you said the magic word in regards to why running backs should get paid. Playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
When does playoff football happen?
Yep. In the snow.
In the wintertime. What happens in the wintertime in most places? Gets freaking cold.
Yep.
And anyone who's played football in the cold knows, one, the football gets really slick, which makes it, one, hard to throw the ball, two, harder to catch the ball. When you look at a lot of these teams who have made their runs, and Kyle, you threw out the stat earlier of the highest paid rusher in every single one of the Super Bowls for the Super Bowl winners. And that's great. I mean, it is what it is. It just happens to be one of those stats that people will always go back to in these arbitration hearings or these contract negotiations. What I will counter that is, how did Tampa Bay make the Super Bowl the year that Tom Brady was there?
Playoff Lenny.
When they needed to beat the Green Bay Packers, who had a more efficient run game? Was it Green Bay or was it Tampa Bay?
No, it was Leonard Fournette. Yeah,
Exactly.
all day.
Leonard Fournette, one, carried the Jacksonville Jaguars to almost a Super Bowl a few years earlier, and then did it again with Tampa Bay. And now he is trying to find a job somewhere because no one wants to give him a contract.
Mm-hmm.
You look at everyone who says, well, the quarterback's the most important position. Tom Brady's the best to ever do it. Well, how come he's trusting Leonard Fournette to win them a football game when it matters?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that kind of thing to me, just it has never sat well when I look at the grand scheme of where these people are talking about running backs being right now. So, I mean, going back to your point, Kyle, the image is at an all-time low, and it needs to have someone like a Barry Sanders, S-type player to bring it back to that, position of, look, we need to have a guy who we can put out there and just give it to 25, 30 times a game. Because at the end of the day, and I think I mentioned this to you before, Kyle, the average lifespan of the typical NFL player is 2 to 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
How long is a contract? 4
Oh,
to 5 years,
yeah.
Right? Why would I not want to bring in the best player available, regardless of position, and get 4 to 5 years out of that player? And then if he says, I'm hurt at the end of it, I need to retire, or I'm going to move on elsewhere, I'm going to sign somewhere else, that's the cost of doing business. That's the business side of the NFL. So, I mean, if I'm scared to take a running back because I want to maximize that pick value by bringing in another position, well, my quarterback that I picked might sit for 2-3 years before he's ready to actually be that guy. Well, I wasted 3 years. That receiver that I bring in is less likely to make an impact as a rookie than a running back will. So I'm wasting 1 year with a rookie receiver. That offensive lineman might need to bulk up and put on 10 more pounds and switch positions when I bring him in. So now I'm wasting a year with an offensive lineman. There's an argument for everything. But again, Brendan, you said it to start the episode. It all depends on the mentality of the executive that you've got. If you've got a GM who's willing to take risks and says, you know what, I'm only here for a certain amount of time, I want to bring in the best talent that I can, you're probably in a good position to get in good players who can help you win now. If you have a defensive-minded head coach, well, you might get one side of it to say, I want to bring in defensive players, and then I want a quarterback who can manage the game, and then that way I don't have to worry about that. Mm-hmm. Sure. You also might get the defensive coach that says, I want ball control, and I want my defense off the field as much as possible. The best way to do that is to have a good run game, so that way they can control the clock.
Mike Vrabel,
exactly. And that's why that marriage has worked so well with Derrick Henry, right?
Exactly.
So, again, when you look at what's devalued versus what's not, I'll throw this out there, and you can kind of pinball off of it too. When you look at the running back position, What's the one position you put your best athlete at when you start playing football?
Running back.
Running back.
Yeah.
Who is typically the best athlete on the offense? Running back.
Yeah.
I will say it. It's the running back. I'll say it.
I was waiting for Brendan to hop in there.
Yeah.
I can't say that, but I'll accept it if Kyle thinks so.
Yeah.
I honestly do, because again, you look at all around skill set and all around athleticism that a running back has to bring. They need to be fast, need to be explosive, need to be strong, need to be smart. They need to have all those things. I'm an offensive lineman. I was 6'6", 290 pounds. I'm not winning a 40-yard sprint against a running back, a receiver, a quarterback, anybody. Okay, maybe a quarterback. But, receivers and running backs, no. But that's not what I meant to do. Running backs need to be able to outrun defenders, overpower defenders, outthink defenders, all while doing this at one position. Mm-hmm. Right? So when you look at the best athletes on the field typically are a running back. When you look at combine scores, Pro Football Focus, next gen stats, all that kind of stuff, all rolled into one, running backs are typically going to be your highest graded athletes. That's just how it is. Why are you looking at the running back now as being the lowest valued position on a team when they are, one, the best athletes on the field from the time they pick up the football to the time they get to your team in the professional ranks? Makes no sense.
No. And again, even building on that, where Brendan, you could probably even shed some light on this here, is again, we go back to the mentality of, we see what they do once it's a handoff, right? But we don't see all the little things that happen. So like, even just shed some light on, let's even say you touch the ball 20 times a game. All right, there's 20 tackles right there, or you get in the end zone every now and then, 18 tackles. But how many times are you actually getting your ass put in the dirt off a block, or another assignment, or a battle or something like that? There's so many more times that these running backs are being asked to put their body on the line and actually have to step up physically. And as Kyle said, be that all-around athlete more than just when the ball gets put in your chest and you get told run.
Yeah. I mean, running backs go into contact every single play, very, very much like the offensive and defensive line go into contact every single play. Running backs are the exact same. Right. And the issue with some of the collisions between the running backs and linebackers, or the running backs and other positions, are just the degree of separation prior to the collision, right? When you have a 5-yard sprint at somebody before colliding, it's going to be a little bit more aggressive than in the NFL, where you're helmet to helmet with the offensive line and defensive line. So we're talking about big collisions. And that, as I alluded to earlier, some of the big injuries to some of the star running backs over the past few years are definitely making some of the front office execs a little apprehensive to spend a lot of money on them. And then, as you both actually kind of mentioned earlier as well, is definitely the aspect of these specialty backs as well. You have these receiving backs, you have these goal line backs, the power backs, and in all honesty, just the emergence of that. Well, only one of them can be on the field at one time, right? And that alone there, just that mentality of we need 3 running backs to get the job done, hurts the value right there as well, right? So it's such a multifactorial issue. But that being said, I mean, there's so much that goes into the position, and they are one of the most important positions on the field. And like I alluded to earlier, you have to know what every other position group on the field is doing, because as Kyle talked about earlier, when you give up sacks, I guarantee you 9 out of 10 sacks that are given up when someone comes free, miscommunication issue. The running backs have to know when the quarterback's hot. The running backs have to know who their blocking assignment is. The majority of sacks that are given up by running backs, or it might get bad. We're like, I'm sure Kyle hates this too, when they get the teleprompter out, the commentators, and they say, oh, the offensive lineman was supposed to go here, but the running back's running free. And you're like, it's probably the running back's guy. And the offensive line was probably right. I guarantee you, when someone comes free, 9 out of 10 times it's going to be on the running back, not the offensive line. And it's a communication issue, right? I mean, communication is so important in football, and you have to be able to be smart to play it. The number of running backs that I played with, competed against, that were way better physically. They were a better football player than me, and I have no problem admitting that, but couldn't get on the field because they didn't understand pass protection or didn't understand receiving concepts. It's incredible, right? So it's taken for granted. Some of these star guys, like I said, the 3 down running backs in the NFL that are out there for every single snap, how smart they are, and their understanding of football, the offensive line play, the quarterback play, the receiving play, is vastly underrated. Vastly underrated. They have meetings with the receivers, they have meetings with the offensive line, and they have meetings with the quarterbacks.
And those are the guys that deserve those big contracts. I'm not talking about, giving every running back, every Tom, Dick, and Harry a giant raise, because like Brendan just said, these guys can't do everything. But the Derrick Henrys of the world, the Christian McCaffreys of the world, those are the guys who deserve to be paid fair market value and given these big contracts, because they will not be around forever. So pay them while you've got them, because you will not be able to replace them very easily. I guarantee you that.
Yeah. And I mean, right now we're looking around the landscape of the free agents, and, even some of the players who could still even suit up for week 1, like a Josh Jacobs, who led the league in rushing last year, but isn't even in Las Vegas right now, right? Like he's not even in the city with the team because of the lack of respect that these guys are getting. You guys have said it over and over again. One of the most important positions on the field, but not being compensated like it in any way, shape, or form. So, Brendan, to that point, obviously you're going to check in when you're a free agent or a contract's coming up. You're probably going to touch base with some of your friends around the league and, hey, oh, you're a free agent. What are you hearing, this, that, and the other? But have you ever seen, at least in your time playing the game, like a concentrated, we need to have a positional summit and try and reshape the market like this? Or is this just uncharted territory at this point, what we're seeing in the NFL?
It's a little bit of uncharted territory, I'll be honest, but I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Put me on the picket line, man. I'm pumped up. Like I said, these guys deserve some respect, and it's unfortunate. It really is that their value isn't shown love, right? Like I don't blame them for being frustrated. They deserve to get paid, and go and get yours, right? I have a feeling that come week 1, some of these coaching staffs and ownership group and front office will be a little bit more willing to spend some money when they see what they have in house versus what they produced in prior years.
Yeah, and and Brendan, you could talk to this too, because I've seen it a million times. In training camp, a lot of guys look good, but as soon as the live rounds are firing, and you know what, preseason games don't count.
No.
Those, the glitz and glamour of that first regular season game, you really get to see who can actually play and who can't. And there's a lot of guys, especially at the running back position, who, man, that guy looks like he's going to be, the best back in the league, and he's going to run all over everybody. And the first time he gets tackled, you see him, with his eyes, he gets up, bug eyes. He's, he doesn't know where, that he can't hack it. So, you need to have a little bit of that dog in you to play running back at that high of a level. And if you don't have it, teams are going to be scrambling for somebody who does.
Yeah, well, it's exactly that. And as your coaching staff has a plan for each player going into these preseason games as well, right? So, I mean, there was no way that Josh Jacobs was going to be a workhorse in the preseason games, right? You need him fresh for week 1. Who cares what happens in the 4 preseason games? They don't mean a damn thing. You've got years of film on Josh Jacobs. You know what he can do, right? Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of what they do moving forward, well, now all of a sudden you're week one and you might have three backs that are banged up from playing 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a real concern, and like I said, I don't blame them. You have such a short career in the NFL such a short window, especially any position, but especially the running back position, such a short window to make your money. And so I don't blame them. There's a dollar figure where in all honesty, and this is just me being honest, where it's just not worth playing for, because that's what you're worth. You already have enough money to sustain yourself. If you don't absolutely need the money, then why would you play and risk injury when you can hang out, relax, stay in shape for a year, and then go and probably get your money next year, right? So I don't blame them.
Yeah, well, to put that into perspective, where would you guys rank Cole Kmet on the tight end landscape?
I was waiting to see how long it would take us to get to the tight end landscapes here, but yeah, he's kind of in that Kenny Golladay money territory.
But honestly, like ranking wise, where would you put Cole Kmet in the NFL?
Not even on my radar screen.
Like in the 20s?
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
So he would be the second highest paid running back in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy.
Well, that's just it, right? Like we said earlier, you're seeing third string wide receivers making RB1 money. And that's really what needs to change there, where, a multi-billion-dollar league, but we're going to solve the labor negotiation on this podcast right here, clearly. But I mean, like looking into our crystal balls,
Canada.
Yeah, exactly. But really though, like looking into our crystal balls, and we've mentioned it a few times there, it is a short lifespan to begin with in the NFL. At running back, there's that increased risk just because of all that contact that you're taking on a snap to snap basis, like you mentioned, Brendan. Do you think that given the amount of not only, discontent voiced by the players, but also the media traction that this story has been getting covered by every major network? Like, this isn't just getting swept under the rug and, oh, poor millionaires, they're complaining about their next contract. Like, it's been a talking point on every talking head show, podcast, sports radio that you go out there. So is all of this leading towards perhaps, we've already eschewed taking them in the first round, right? So we're only looking at 4-year contracts. Is the sweet spot that they eventually land at maybe going to be 2 or 3 year deals, but paying them fairly, more in that, $10 million range if they deserve it, and seeing the term come back, or sorry, the length of the contracts come down, but the actual value of them increase? Like, I'm just trying to think of how we move forward from this in a way that the players feel like they're at least being respected a little bit more for what they bring to the table, and the owners aren't completely throwing away what their front offices are telling them, which is all of those easy to grab stats of, oh, look at the last 10 Super Bowl winners, and we'll just pick up a LeGarrette Blount and plug him in for 1.5 million and he can be our Super Bowl winning back. Like, where's the sweet spot that we move on from here?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue right now is just the trend over the last 3 years, I'll say, to go towards fully guaranteed contracts. And it's the guaranteed money that's the big holdup, especially for the running backs, right? The thing that I'll say is the receiving position actually loses the most games each year to injury, but you've got a deep depth chart in receivers, right? I think I saw running backs for like number 3 or 4 on the lost games per injury. But the issues, like I said, when you're paying one guy a substantial amount of money, that becomes a depth issue at that position, right? And it's tough when the average career is 2 to 3 years to shell out a 4-year contract for running backs, or even a 3-year contract with the running backs, and they want 30 million guaranteed, and that's only 10 million a year, but it's that guarantee. The issues at the running back position, the injuries are generally catastrophic. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that when the running backs fall off the cliff, it's one, way more evident than any other position on the field. And two, it happens a lot earlier, just because of the nature of the position, the amount of contact with what they're subjecting their bodies to as well, right? So I really think it's the guaranteed money and the guaranteed portion of the contracts that's the big holdup. But the problem is that the other position groups have set that expectation already, right? We're pretty much seeing almost literally like 90% of everyone's contracts guaranteed nowadays. But I mean, that's where I kind of, yes, I'm team running back, but from an owner's perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense to give a running back a 4-year contract with guaranteed money, just because stats will show that he probably won't be around for all those 4 years. So it's a tough situation, but you're probably right. It'll probably end up trending towards that 2 to 3 year mark, and probably hover probably between that 8 to 12 $1 million a year. It's just that if the entire league, or they get some sort of mandate on guaranteed contracts or something like that, it would significantly help labor negotiations. That's for sure.
Yeah, so not only did Deshaun Watson screw up the quarterback market with his fully
Yeah.
guaranteed deal, but now he's also screwing the running backs as well too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to Brendan's point, I think you're even starting to see a little bit of that fear transition over to the quarterback position with mobile quarterbacks. Teams are very hesitant to sign long-term deals with quarterbacks who like to run the football. You just saw the Lamar Jackson Baltimore negotiations take an ugly turn. You're going to see it with Chicago once Justin Fields is up. I'll guarantee you that. They're asking him to do all that stuff now, and it's great because he's doing it very effectively. But when it comes time to pay him, that's going to be a very difficult negotiation. So I think that in the long run, if you're scared that a player is going to get hurt, then don't pick him. No. Like, that's your choice as the executive of that franchise. If you're scared, don't pick them. If you don't want a good running back on your team, don't pick them. There's going to be teams who will invest in whatever talent that they can, and they're going to play them, and they're going to win football games. So yeah, I mean, I get the perspective of all the hits that running backs take far exceeds that of all other positions, because, like, Brendan was saying earlier, other than offensive linemen, they're really the only ones who are hitting every single play, coming into contact every single play. Is it, a car crash every single play? No, it's not. But, the odd push, hit, ding here and there, bruises, they hurt. Scrapes, turf burn. I don't know if you ever had turf burn before. Doesn't feel good. So, there's a couple of things that I was thinking about, and I've thought about this for years because I've seen it as a coach and as a player. Special teams. We ask so much out of our running backs on the special team side of things because, like I said earlier, they're great athletes. You want them on the field to make plays. Brendan, you were the best special teamer in the CFL for years because of your ability to get down the field, make those open field plays because you were an athlete. Are you more likely to get hurt playing special teams or at running back?
That's a good question. I'll tell you I was less tired the games that I started at running back compared to playing special teams. I'll tell you, it's a fact. Yeah. I swear. Playing running back playing as a starting running back in the CFL felt easier than playing on special teams.
100%. And that will go to my point right there. When are you most likely to get hurt? When you're fresh or when you're tired?
Tired.
Exactly. So, that could be a clause in these contracts that say, look, we're going to invest heavily into our number one guy. We're never going to play our number one guy in special teams. That's just, stupidity. But we want to have that high level second back so that way it mitigates the risk of losing that first guy. So now that could be a clause in, if I'm a second string running back, there's no special team reps. What? Right? So I might get bored being there and be like the backup quarterback. But look, the backup quarterback position is probably the easiest job in the universe because you're not asked to do much until the guy goes down, and then the expectation is very low. So if you're going to have a set structure for that second running back to say, look, I'll bring in a Dalvin Cook. I'll bring in a Leonard Fournette to be that emergency number 2, and he's going to be our guy to take over. Well, I'll set aside $5-6 million for that guy. I'll pay my other guy $15 million, $20 million for 2 guys who could ultimately win games for us. That's peanuts in the NFL, right? Mm-hmm. With the extended practice rosters, you can now bring in 3 or 4 more of these special team guys who can get all those reps and then become and work their way up the depth chart. Because, again, when did Denver win the Super Bowl in the 90s? When they moved Terrell Davis from a special teamer to the starting running back. Did Denver win any more Super Bowls after Terrell Davis was not on that team?
No. Peyton Manning came along.
I understand. What's that, 20 years later? So the reason I say that, and again, I was thinking about this earlier today, look at all the success that the Denver run game had, right? Mm-hmm. Great run game every single year. But did they win? No, because the run game didn't do well when it mattered, which is in the playoffs. So if you can have that, excelling running back that can, you can put out there to say, look, he's going to rush for 1,300 to 1,400 yards during the season. We're going to minimize the amount of reps he gets outside of when we give him the ball. And we're going to keep him fresh. That way, when he does get the ball, he's going to maximize those opportunities. And when we get to those difficult games, when we've got to go into Pittsburgh or Baltimore or Cincinnati, or any of these cold weather places like Buffalo, tell me that you don't want to have a good running game going into Buffalo in January. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. So, there's so many cases to be afraid to pay a running back because of risk of injury, but there's so many opportunities to say, a running back is literally one of the biggest lifebloods to an organizational success. So if we're not willing to pay them, then we're not going to have, the level of success we want, because in the long run, just like business, you guys both understand it, you get what you pay for.